well, we're after 6 o'clock. We said we'd climb in straight away and do our tributes to Uncle Bill Keil.
Is Nigel Keil there, Andy?
No, he's not.
He said he was going to.
Nigel's not, but Andy is there, so that's we can go.
Yeah, lekker. Okay, so what we want to do was while we just ramble on before the meeting starts, let's pay a tribute to Bill, who passed away just over 5 years ago now, and just to remember some of the stories that and the memories that Bill gave us. So if anyone wants to kick off on that, thank you for that slide there. Who put that up, Keil?
Yeah, I've got it. This is actually a little clip. I've condensed what I did before, but just of stuff of Uncle Bill on it's 2 minutes or 1.5 minutes. Shall I let it run?
Yes, yeah, let's watch.
Slideshow.
Yes, let it run.
Okay, and away we go. Okay, so there you go. Neil, if I may just say here that just on one comment on that little video clip there was a picture there of Bill, Klaus, Edna, and Trixie, all of them gone. Very, very sad. Anyway.
Yes, I picked that up too, Carl.
Yeah, okay. And I do believe that the idea here was to remember him and in the amusing way with some of the sayings that he had, which is always a bloody laugh a minute. Like he'd say, never pass a toilet and don't trust a fart. And that was one. And, you know, I used it for years, the one where he said, you are, and I still use it, you are welcome as the flowers in spring. So now it's over to the rest of you to contribute a couple of sayings that he had.
Cool. Yeah, good video there, Carl. And I bet those bunch in that photo you were talking to are kicking hell up there in the big hangar up in the sky.
Yes. And I can imagine how Trixie is nagging. She. In fact, I can hear it from here.
Cool. You know that I first met Bill on the way down to the first Margate. We were flying down to Margate, and it was 1981, and I'd hired a Cessna 172, and the weather clagged in at Harrismith, so we all turned back to Harrismith Airfield and landed. It was just a little grass patch there full of bales of hay. We landed there, and Nigel.
Put on your camera, Neil.
Very young. And Nigel and Bill landed in the Oyster, and we all went down we got a lift down to the local hotel because we had to stay over there that night. And I think, Andy, he had just had an engine failure on the way down to that Margate, and he was telling us about it. And I thought, geez, these are true aviators. I just come out of the flight school scene, so it's really opened my eyes.
See, Neil and everybody, I made reference to it earlier. My first contact with Bill was he was at 3M with Woody Woods. And I think it was Johnny Woods that ferried out the pits to Donata. And Poborezny, Tom, was out here, and he came and he gave us a demonstration at Donata. Now, you know, the aerobatics was foreign because, you know, hobbits can't do things like that. But the important thing was the enthusiasm that came across from both these guys, Woody as well as Bill, and Bill was the leading guy. And from then on, I maintained contact with Bill. And I don't know, Andy, would you perhaps know what year that was that Tom came out? Any idea?
Unmute, Andy.
You muted, Andy. It looks as though you muted.
He's doing something.
Click the red.
You're still muted. The sign says you're muted.
There should be a little pop-up on your screen. Oh, there we go.
No, it's still muted.
Oh.
You should have a little message on your screen, Andy.
Oh, there we are. You nearly had it unmuted.
I think you tapped it. I'm going to ask again.
Andy, bottom left corner of your screen there's a little microphone with a red line through it. Click on that. It might even work if you click like that. Oh. Hello, Frans. There's Nigel.
Yeah. Cool.
And John. You missed our video, John.
Andy, there should be a pop-up message on your screen to ask you to unmute. If you just tap it, it should allow you to unmute.
No, you're still muted, Andy.
I'm sorry, my lip reading's not that good.
Okay, I think I'm back. I'm on air now.
Yeah.
Hiya, John.
Hi, guys. Hello,
you just
everybody.
missed their little tribute video.
But I guess that's the one that you've had on the group.
No, it's slightly different. Yeah.
Okay.
Carl, the other thing that I'd forgotten was the Rhodesian connections. Bill continually used to come out with things from Rhodesia, etc., and, you know, touching sides with all the ex-Rhodesian guys. And obviously the roots were, you know, deep there, and his move to here was quite dramatic, I mean, down south. but he got his roots down here and he got embedded.
It's not the signal, Andy. You've got to click on the microphone. The microphone is on a computer function. So you've got to click on the microphone just so that the little red line goes away. With a mouse. Or with whatever you... And I saw Nigel there. Nigel, you got no camera.
Nigel's unmuted, so he's okay.
No. Yeah.
Got to do something, yeah.
Hello, Robert. Would you remember anything that Bill said there that was amusing, Derek? No, can't hear me.
You're referring to Derek Hopkins?
Yeah.
Sorry, Bill, what was the question?
I said, don't you remember any of the sayings that Bill Keil had?
Oh, there were so many, yes. I'm thinking.
Okay.
Another one of
There's Nigel. Yeah, hello, Nigel.
Good evening.
Sorry, guys, may I just intervene here quickly? And it's not to let Carl know that he won the lotto. I'm much younger than most of you. But I have to say that I read a lot of the articles or stories that were written by Bill. And in the early 70s, I'm guessing, from the old newsletters that I read, and they are hilarious. I wish that I had actually known him. He really sounded like he was an amazing storyteller. The stories are hilarious.
Oh, didn't he call himself Pookie or something like that?
Yes,
Yep,
did you not see my note today? AKA Pookie.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know what, Bill, how did Bill get the name Bill?
Okay, so Dad's real name is Hugh Roderick, and for some reason, when he was a youngster, he refused to answer to the name of Hughie. His mother, Violet, used to call him Hughie, and he would refuse to talk to him. He absolutely refused. And so he decided his name was Bill, and that was it. And he's always been called Bill.
Cool. Great. Nigel, I was just saying the first time I met you and Bill was on the way down to Margate, that first one where we all had to land at Harrismith. And you guys arrived, we all had to land, it was like a grass airfield with bales of hay all over it, and spend the night there. And I think Bill had just had an engine failure on that trip on the way down, down to Margate.
I know one famous incident that he had. John Bonnard and I were flying in the Ulster. We were in Formo with Dad, and he was flying Woody Woods' Sonora. And just south of Heidelberg, suddenly we saw the Sonora start doing all kinds of aerobatic maneuvers and disappear down towards the ground. So John and I followed it down, and we saw him lob this thing into a mealie field. But we couldn't talk to him. He wasn't talking on the radio. Anyway, so he landed this Sonora, and it tipped right up on its nose. And what had happened is it had a ground adjustable Warnke propeller, and it shed one of the blades. And that vibration just about shook that airplane completely to pieces. And obviously it changed the radio frequency. So he was shouting Mayday and all sorts of things on the radio, but he was actually on Donato's frequency. And they picked it up and they vectored a civvy airplane in that direction. But after we collected the wreckage a week or so later after Margate, we found that engine was hanging on by a thread. The engine mounts were broken except for one, which was half broken. So that engine nearly came out. And there's John, he's right below me there. He was with me when that happened.
Yeah, and I think
I remember he was actually sitting in the back, and the magneto switches were in the front. So when this whole thing started, he had to climb into the front and switch off the engine. And the vibration was apparently so bad that it came back on again. and then he had
Yeah,
got
flick.
back.
It had two switches that stuck out of the panel like that, and he flicked down, and the vibration flicked them back up again because the switches were long.
Jeez.
Yeah,
So-
that was remarkable.
And so the engine started again. So he had to climb over into the front cockpit again and switch it off. All this while he was heading for terra firma.
He was a very cool guy. Eh? He foiled, I think, a good few hijack attempts. He used to drive a lot because he was on the road for the business.
Yeah.
And I don't think they got the better of him. I think once he even had an armed robber in the house.
Yes, he did.
And he managed to outwit the guy and somehow save himself. So he really was a quick thinking and amazing man.
Nigel Jeff here. I made reference
Hi,
earlier.
Jeff.
And I tried to ask Nigel, Andy, when Tom Poborezny came out and he flew the pits at Donata as a demo for us, I think Johnny Woods ferried it over, etc. Any idea what year that was? When would that have been? It must have been late 70s?
Yeah, probably mid-70s, because I joined EAA in the late 70s, and it was before then. It was before I was in EAA. I know when Tom came out and he flew Woody's pits, he said, "This thing's a pig. It's too heavy." And they took the starter motor off the aeroplane because it was too heavy, and they took everything out of the aeroplane. And I think even when he did the aerobatics, they even took the battery out when there was no radio. But I do remember when he was doing his various Lomshavaks and things that he did in that aeroplane, that he said, "There's something coming out the front of the engine here. There's snow that's appearing over the windscreen every time I do a snap roll or something to the left or the right or something." And when we went and had a look at it, what was happening is the engine was flailing around inside the cowling, and the prop was actually trimming the edges of the whole nose bowl, which made us all over the show. And that pit was an open cockpit at the time. We did find some of that fiberglass in the cockpit.
Lovely, lovely.
But Nigel, I was telling you the other day, one of my favorite sayings from our Bill was, you mentioned he had got an agency who got involved with that Starlight microlights.
That's quite right. He got involved with Richard Charter of the crowd called Parachute Industries, and he was retrenched from 3M. So he went off and he started this business where they got the agencies for Flight Star, Dual Star, Avid Flyer, and Cosmos Strike. And he was trying to sell those. So I went and converted to those airplanes, but I never flew the weight shift airplanes, the Cosmos Strike, and those sort of things, because I was so used to pulling the stick back to go, and the nose would go towards the top or towards your head, depending whether you're upside down or not. But you couldn't fly these things upside down because they inflated the wing. It was a Regolo wing. So I didn't want to get into flying those weight shift airplanes where pull was down and, you know, things were the other way around. So Tim James, who later joined SAA, became his test pilot. And Tim used to assemble the microlight airplanes and fly them. Hugh Farrow also was quite involved with the microlights, and they built a little airfield just over the road from where I live now at Waterfall, which was the backside of Sunninghill. It's exactly where the Polo Field shopping centre is today. We had a little airfield there with some hangars and what have you, and we used to fly the Flight Star and the Dual Star. And the Avid Flyer used to live in my garage in Buccleuch, and that had folding wings. So Bill would come and haul the Avid Flyer out with the wings folded and drag it down the driveway, put it in the road, straighten the wings out, and then he'd taxi it down the road. And he'd take off from a patch of like an open park at the bottom of the road in Buccleuch, and then he'd fly off and go and do his demos and do things like that. It was quite an amazing little aeroplane. And that was long ago. That was the first of the two-stroke super, you know, the little lightweight Aries, fabric covered and whatever. It flew very well. It really went well. We had a lot of fun in those flight stars and dual stars. And we actually, Bill wrote in, what's his name? He's was a comic captain. I'm just trying to think of his name. Was a famous South African radio presenter. And they taught him
Ian de Vos.
That's it. Thank you, Carl. That's exactly it. Wrote in Ian de Vos, and they taught him to fly on the Dual Star. And Ian did quite a lot of PR work for Flight Star and Dual Star, and they sold quite a lot of. Then the rand took a pounding, and those airplanes just got too expensive to sell in South Africa, as you know, fully built up airplanes. I went with Hugh Farrow. We went over to the Pioneer factory in the States, and Pioneer at that stage were building the parachutes for the recovery of the solid rocket boosters for the shuttle. You know, the two outside, the small ones that are solid boosters, they were recovering those by parachute into the sea. And Pioneer were building those things. It was all very hush-hush and secret in those. Actually went to the Pioneer factory, and they had these huge boosters and all the parachutes and all the stuff, and we flew the Flight Star, and then they developed the ballistic parachute, which was fitted to the Flight Star and the Dual Star. And a lot of airplanes now, the light aircraft, have these ballistic parachutes. So they were really the pioneers of all that stuff. And that was in early days. Quite interesting, very exciting.
Cool. Now, just on that Starlight, it was one of the first microlights that came out that had struts. And
yeah, it had 3-axis controls. Yeah.
And the ones all had that king post on the top of the wing, with 1,000 cables coming from the top of the wing, from the king post to the areas on the top of the wing, and another 1,000 cables coming from the bottom of the fuselage up to the wing. And Bill was so proud of the Starlight that he was telling us, the way you rig those other old ultralights is you connect all the cables. When you finished connecting them all up, you throw a canary inside there. And if the canary escapes, then you've left one cable loose. He had a great way of
it was one of his favorite sayings. He had some real beauts that he used to come out with. Dad had quite a tough upbringing as a kid. He was born in 1929, and they went over to the UK at the start. And his father was killed in one of the raids on flying I think it was a Hamden. And he was killed. And my grandmother, Dad's mom, remarried Harry's brother, Hector. He was a bit younger. And he went into the RAF, and he learned to fly in the RAF on Tiger Moths. And then at the ripe old age of, I think, 21 or something, went solar, or 20. I think maybe he was, no, wait, he was about 22 or 23 when he was killed. So he was probably about 18 or 19. Went solar in a hurricane with a grand total of 40 hours. He fought in the Battle of Britain, and the Battle of Britain. And then at the end of the Battle of Britain, they were put on an aircraft carrier, and they were sent to Murmansk, to Russia, with their Hurricanes. Anyway, they got just to somewhere around, I think, the Outer Hebrides or somewhere around there, and they were torpedoed, and the aircraft carrier was sunk. And he survived that escapade because he came from Rhodesia. Why? Because he could swim, and most of the Poms couldn't swim. So he survived that lot, and they fished him out of the water, and they gave him another hurricane, but they took the wings off it, and they took the guns off them as well. And they put them in packing cases, and they said, okay, go and try again. You must get this right. So off he went to Murmansk, and they sailed right around Finland, around the top end of Russia to Murmansk. And I think at that stage he was flying for 333 Squadron. And their whole trick was they had to teach the Russians to fly these airplanes. I don't know if you know it, but they produced way more Hurricanes than they did of almost any other British aircraft type. I think the number's around 12,000. I don't know if you knew that. There's a lot of Hurricanes. And they kept building them, and they were giving those to the Russians and selling them. And It was all part of that Lend-Lease thing and whatever the deal was. But the Russians wanted the Hurricane. They didn't like flying it, but they wanted it because it had a wooden mainspar. And because of the wooden mainspar, they could put massive cannons under the wings, bolted to the mainspar, and they could take on the German panzers. So those, I think they put 40 mil cannons, those Schwach 40 mil cannons on the wings of the Hurricane, because it could take the pounding of the recoil. They said it was slow, and because it was very stable, it wasn't maneuverable enough, but it could take quite a beating. But remember, those airplanes, the Pommy airplanes were built for England, where the fuel tank was small, so it couldn't go very far because they didn't have to fly very far to defend England. So the fuel range was very limited, but that fuel tank sat just in front of the pilot. The Poms liked doing that. And that was a big problem if that thing caught fire. And the Germans knew that they would always try and shoot the fuel tank on those Hurricanes to try and get the thing to burn. So the Russians didn't really like the Hurricanes, but they were tough and reliable, and they took them by the thousands and thousands and thousands. Anyway, Hector then was taken back to the UK and converted to Spitmark 5Bs, and they were sent to Malta. And I have some pictures somewhere. I've seen some pictures of all blue Spitfires that were used at Malta. And Hector flew from Malta. He was one of the few guys defending Malta when the Germans invaded North Africa. Once the Americans got to invade the western side of North Africa and started to push from that side, and the Germans had pushed the English and the South Africans and Rhodesian forces way back towards Cairo. Hector and his squadron were transferred to North Africa, and they fought at Alamein, and then they pushed back towards the west. So they were trying to meet up with the Rommel had to fight a war on two fronts. He had to fight the Brits and the South Africans and the Rhodesians on the eastern front, and then behind him was the Americans who were pushing in from that side. So there was like a pincer movement. Anyway, Hector was shot down and killed by 88 mil flak battery defending Libya from the Germans. So defending Libya was a great idea. I'm glad we defended Libya. I'm sure everyone's in agreement with that. And now America's German. So yeah, poor old Hector must be rolling in his grave. Dad lost his dad, he lost his stepfather, and he lost his uncle. So all three of the Keil brothers were killed in the Second World War. And Louis' name is on he flew for the SAF, and his name is on the SAF Memorial at Klapperkop. Are you about to start your meeting now, Neil?
Yeah, cool. Nice story there, Nigel. Yeah. No, well, yeah, it's been great to talk about, Bill, and we should do this again sometime. And yeah, Nigel, you and Andy must come along and join one of our breakfast lines. Or
yeah, we'll do that sometime.
And Andy lives about 6 days by camel from here. Nigel's just down the drag.
Oh, cool. The long road, the high road.
Great. Yeah. Thanks, guys.
One final comment. I don't know if you can hear me, Neil.
Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, a couple of things of Billy's that I recall. When it was getting towards the end of the evening in the pub, he would come out with things like, "We'd better get out of here before they call the cops." And I must be getting home to hot tongue and cold shoulder, obviously referring to his wife. And the other thing I loved was he had lovely names for people, like Jimmy Poppenbanger. I'm sure most of you remember Jimmy Popham. Then my friend Philip Herselman, Growly Bear. And then poor old Stableford had a mishap once when he was doing duel with another instructor. and they put a J3 cub in the fields, called him Stumbleflight after that. And then Mike Spence was Walkie Talkie. And then finally his own wife was Goat. So if you can call your own wife Goat, you can call anybody anything. Agreed.
Nice one, John. Cool. Great. Well, shall we move on to the meeting? Now, you guys are quite welcome to hang in if you want. We've got a guy
we will. Thanks.
here talking to us, and yeah, so Paul's going to take over the meeting from here. Charlie Becker's joining us at 7, and he wants to get going straight away. So, Paul, over to you. Thank you, Nigel, and thanks, Andy, for joining.
Thank you, Nigel.
Thanks, Neil.
Thanks, Nigel.
And Derek.